Welcome back to Not Projects. Today we are working on this very nice example of a 2004 Acura TL. Let's get under the hood and I'll tell you the story on this one. Story of this car is they were driving it down the road and noticed the temperature gauge creeping up, and it got to the point where it was overheating. So they pulled off, let it cool down, saw it was low on coolant, added more coolant to it, and then went to limp it back home. And on the way, it just died in the middle of the road. Supposedly, the valve train is no longer turning with the crank, which obviously would indicate that the timing belt broke. The water pump on this engine is timing belt driven, so potentially the water pump failed and was leaking on the belt or something like that. We'll see when we start digging in. The coolant is low. Pretty low, I can't even see what the level is, and you can see a little bit of evidence of overheating, and there's some water spots, and you actually see moisture up here under the hood in the front of the engine area. So I think first thing we're going to do is take off the timing belt cover. This is the Honda J series motor. It's a J32A3, I believe it is. They had a bunch of different revisions. Timing belt snapped, and more than likely it did from the story that we're about to verify. Then there's a pretty good chance that valves are bent. So I'm thinking here pretty rapidly we're going to be tearing both the heads off to check for bent valves. So we'll start by popping this cover off here. Looks like the locks are missing. Not that that's a big deal. You see it's been snapped, so someone didn't realize you gotta unlock it before you take it off. The serpentine belt's looking a little bit glazed actually, so it could potentially have an idler that's going out or something. Not a big deal. Just something we want to keep in mind once we get it running. So let's take the serpentine belt off, and that'll give us access to the timing covers. So to remove our serpentine belt, we're just going to use a 14mm wrench, and we'll get on there, and we'll just turn it as if we're loosening, and that'll let us pop the belt off. A little heftier than I thought. Get our belt fished out of here. You can see this belt's definitely due for replacement, starting to crack. So now we can get to our upper timing belt covers. They're just held on with 10mm screws, machine screws. They go all the way around, so we'll pop those off, and if our belt has let go, it should be obvious. One thing I forgot to mention is this did have a timing belt service done at the 101 or whatever mile service interval that these call for. So, and this car has 160,000 miles on it, so definitely an early failure if it's a timing belt, but if the water pump let go, that could maybe cause some issues with the belt. One of these bolts get covered by the tensioner when it's at full extension, so we'll have to kind of hold it back as we get it. Alright, not expecting much here. Yeah. Get this out of here so you can see. You know, it's not actually absolutely shredded. Get this out. It's kind of hung up. Yeah, you can see signs of a not happy timing belt. It's not actually broken, which is honestly surprising. This is why you maybe don't always trust exactly diagnosis before you. So I'm wondering really how much it actually skipped time. If it only skipped a tooth or a couple teeth, we may be okay on the valves, which would make this a really easy job. Let's turn the crank and see if we have timing belt movement. Supposedly we don't, but looks to me like we will, unless something crazy is happening on down there. I don't remember if the water pump on these is driven on the back of the timing belt. I'm guessing it is. So what could have happened is the water pump, I don't know, maybe it seized, and that would cause overheating, obviously. And that would explain why the timing belt's all cooked on the back side. Alright, so I got the car jacked up and I pulled the passenger tire so I can get the crank bolt a little easier. So I'm going to get our 19mm socket on there and spin it over. You guys watch and see if the cam sprocket's going to move. Guess I'll also see if it's building compression, which is always a good point to know. Yeah, I already tell it's building good compression too. I can't actually see it. Turn on my foot. Wow, okay. I don't think it moved at all. How weird is that? Huh. That's kind of crazy. Also, when I turn the crank, it hits a stop, which I'm thinking is valves. That is so weird. So what I'm wondering is maybe the water pump seized, and then the crank stripped all of the teeth off the belt or something. Because you can see the belt's still tensioned. There's, you know, it's maybe a little bit loose, but it's not like it's flopping around in the breeze. And obviously it's not broken, at least from what we can see up here. Alright, so they're right. Crank is moving independent of the cams for sure. Now a question is going to be bent valves? Yeah, probably. But we got to tear in further to find out. Let's start, I guess we're going to need to start popping covers away, and then we'll need to pull the power steering pump out of our way to get to the timing cover, motor mount. So let's start peeling stuff away. Alright, so let's start by popping our crank bolt off. We'll see if the DeWalt has enough juice. Answer is no. I think these are pretty notorious to be a huge pain to get off, so we'll see. Alright, so obviously standard socket didn't work, but let's give it a go with one of these fancy weighted sockets. Apparently they're the bee's knees, so give her a go and see. Yeah, look at that. Alright. Weighted socket is the way to go. Alright, now we should be able to pull our damper off. Alright, let's pull this lower timing cover, then we can actually get a good look at the situation. Alright, so our lower cover won't come out without taking this rear bank cover off. So I got that off, and let me tell you, some of those bolts are a little tricky to get to, but doable. So now our lower cover should be able to pop off, assuming we got all the bolts. Oh, we gotta pop the tensioner off, forgot about that, which should just be that bolt and that center bolt for the idler. Alright, tensioner's out. It's just a 14mm center and that 12mm bolt there. So now, hopefully our lower cover will be free, unless the tensioner is hiding in a bolt, which it was. Alright, now we're free. Let's see what kind of carnage is in here. Yep, exactly what I thought. Get you guys in close. So I'm guessing we're gonna find a seized water pump, because it takes a lot of force to hold the belt and allow the crank to strip it out like that. That's pretty impressive. I have never seen that before. Oh no, it's not even a water pump, it's the idler. Oh my gosh. There's ball bearings everywhere. You guys can see that? At least I think that's an idler. I don't think that's the water pump, is it? Yeah, pretty sure. Pretty sure it's just an idler. But wow. That is really impressive. It's Koyo too. Oh, you know what? I see actually. You guys can probably see that growth there. So that water pump's been leaking a while. I'm thinking what happened. Oh yeah, way up there. Whoever did the timing belt did not seal it right. And you can see it's been dripping on this idler forever, which washed all the grease out, made it fail and seize, and now we have this. So that's why you don't ignore coolant leaks from the timing cover, and also why you seal up water pumps correctly. Alright, well, on to cylinder head removal. That's really impressive. Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but that is a new one to me. If any of you guys have seen that before, let me know. Be interested to know if that's a chronic problem on these or something like that. But I'm just guessing it wasn't put together properly when the timing belt was done last. And then it's just been seeping. Kind of interesting how the overheating coincided with the timing belt breaking though, because you would think if it had been leaking coolant I mean, you could see that stuff was growing. You'd think if it had been leaking for a long time, you would have overheated before. I don't know how the two are linked. I don't know, maybe the bearing on the water pump failed too. I guess we'll see. A bit of a shame, because you can see this engine is super, super clean. No oil leaks or anything. Really kind of impressive for the mileage, 160-some thousand miles, and the underside is like immaculate. The only leak is the water leak, so that's pretty impressive, gotta say. Guess we'll start out by removing the intake manifold. I'm guessing we've got to remove this cover to access the bolts that go down. Then obviously we've got a whole bunch of connectors and stuff to disconnect. Got a torn boot here, so that's going to need addressed. So the rear bank head is going to be a little tight, but I'm pretty sure it's doable, no problem in the car. So if any of you guys are regularly working on stuff, you know how these hose pliers. Get some. Make life so much easier with old hoses. They're like $9 at Harbor Freight or something. Can't beat that. Got a purge solenoid back here. Go ahead and just remove the vacuum line that goes to the tank. The rest can just stay on the manifold. Kind of an interesting design on these that Honda has, where the intake manifold bolts are inside of the manifold. Kind of funky, but okay. You can see here is our flap that changes the intake runner volume at different RPMs to change the torque curve. Don't see anything else I'm missing, although I'm sure there's something. So let's start taking these out. Looks like they're 12 millimeters. Get you guys up a little higher. Not sure if those are the only ones or not. No, these ones are too. Oh, these is a nut. There we go. Alright. Another nut over here. Alright, should just come up. Unless I missed something, which I probably did. And you get this boot all the way out of the way. Oh, whoops. Toward the boot. Good thing it was already cracked. And that actually exposed one more connection, which I'm guessing is the water connection. Oh yeah, that's the water connection for the throttle body to preheat the intake air. So this is going to dump some amount of coolant. Shouldn't be too much though. Yeah, a little dribble. That's about it. Oh, and nope, the e-throttle connection. If it were to have a mechanical throttle, obviously we got that into the cable. Okay, now that might be it. So we're still hung up somewhere. Oh, one more connection that I missed. Some other vacuum connection back here. I don't know what for. Maybe evap related. Alright, that should do it. Alright, so that exposed the lower portion of the intake. Now we have to deal with the fuel rail. I was hoping we could just leave the injectors on the intake and we just flop it over while we're doing the heads, but looks like they get in the way of some of our nuts. Although not by much, we might be able to leave them in place. No, I don't think so. No big deal, we'll just disconnect the fuel. So we got these little protectors here. Wow, good job, Honda. These are actual quick disconnect fuel lines. I hate the Ford ones, which I think other companies use them too, where you gotta slide in the disconnect tool. Those are not quick disconnect, even though they say it is. This one, no tool. Ready? Oh, this one didn't even need disconnected. I thought this must be a returnless fuel system. Well, we may need to anyways, because I think these actually go to different parts of the harness, but we'll see. Alright, now we've got little tiny bolts down here we got to disconnect, and that'll let us pull the injectors out. They look like maybe 8 millimeters to me. Okay, there's one. We'll just flop them over for now. We also got one connector that goes down, I don't know, possibly NOx sensor. I'll pull that for now, and we'll just flop her over. And do the other side. These are hard bolts not to drop. Good thing we're going in there. If I was smart, I would throw like a towel in the socket or something. Keep the bolt tight in there so that I can pull it out without losing it. Too bad I'm not smart. Alrighty. Okay, so now that exposes these, which look like 12 millimeter nuts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 of them. So 4 per side. Let's start working on those. Maybe. I don't know. Be tight if there's one over there. We'll see. Definitely hard bolts to get on. Jeez. Too tight for the ratcheting end, and I can't even get the box end on, or the open end on right. 1/4 inch might be able to get on there. Get the easy one at least. Maybe from under. Yes, but no swing. Yeah, there's one all the way down there. Just enough room. Oh, jeez. Okay, I got 2 more that are way down in here. So, I think we maybe need to pull the power steering pump out of the way. Otherwise, we're just gonna be fighting it. It looks like it's just a couple bolts. Anyways, so no biggie. 12 millimeters, it looks like. It's trying to round that lower bolt. There's no real way to get a socket in there. Well, maybe we just go ahead and take the motor mount off. That might give us a straighter shot. Alright, it's held up with the jack extension. So we got that bolt coming in on the side. Went ahead and threw one back in there so we're not fighting the rubber as we loosen it. Looks like the mount's actually cracked, so we'll probably need to replace it. Oh man. Wow. 17 millimeter bolt. Of course it's too tight to the power steering reservoir, which I can't really get to without the mount out of the way. Just able to sneak it in. There we go. Long-winded. Okay. Now that that's out of our way, maybe now we can take the power steering pump off without stripping it. Okay, I'm gonna guess that's the Honda approved method. Alright, so now we can get down in here. There's a 10 millimeter bolt and a connector that connect to the wiring harness. We can get that out of the way and then have a little bit more room to get to the last two intake bolts. Alright, let's see if we can get to these. Oh, we can take that flat. Now it looks like we got one more just straight down from here holding the wiring harness on. Alright, so see where our bolt was, and then we have this one connector there. That's probably, what, the VVT or something? So, get that unplugged. Oh, maybe cam position sensor. This whole thing should be able to pull up and away. Just like that. Probably a little much for a 1/4 inch. Oh, they're independent. Didn't realize that. So it turns out there's actually two pieces here, which makes sense. Did I forget a bolt here? No. Looks like the front lower manifold has an extra bolt right here because of the EGR, I'm guessing. Okay, there we go. Alright, so now we can our ports, and I guess also a timing cover bolt that I lost. That's good. Oh, and the fuel rope bolts. Let's see what those are. Alright, so we may even be able to see a little bit if we have some bent intake valves. None that are egregiously bent, at least from what I can see so far. So that's a good sign. There's a lot of oil in there. You guys can't really see it. I guess that's a good sign that it holds. Yeah, that's weird. I wonder why there's so much oil sitting in there. Maybe me disturbing the upper intake dripped some oil down because the PCV system, maybe some accumulates in a low spot. I don't know. But looks like the next thing we're gonna have to deal with is there's a coolant crossover between the two cylinder heads. So that's gonna have to come off, unfortunately. And we also need to drain our coolant, obviously. So I think that is our next step. Drain the coolant. So luckily Honda gives us a petcock and an access port, so that's nice. To let that dribble out. That's good coolant too. It's sweet. Most of the new stuff is bitter. Yum yum. So while that's peeing away, let's peel our coils back. We'll also just disconnect the alternator wiring so that we can just lay the whole wiring harness over. I guess we can just disconnect the wires too. But the coil's gotta come out anyways. They're all held on with 6mm hex or Allen. So we'll disconnect the O2 sensor connection and also wherever that goes down to, maybe oil pressure sensor. We're also going to need to pop this retainer out of the bracket, or actually, you know what, I'll just take the bolt out so that we remember exactly where that bracket goes. And then the alternator bolts and whatnot will come out too. Alright, looks like the alternator positive connection is 12mm. Disconnect the EGR valve, water temp sensor. Now it should lay back. Although the tape's so brittle it's cracking. What are you gonna do? Alright, well now we'll keep peeling away at this. So we'll disconnect all these hoses. Looks like they kind of all come to a union up there, so we'll just disconnect them all so that they kind of, you know, their memory is intact. They'll lay back in so we can remember it. I think we'll be able to leave the rest of the hoses attached because we can just pull this over and leave it. So we'll try that first, and if we need to, we'll take more out. Alright, now it looks like we just got a whole bunch of 12mm bolts to pull out on the water crossover. So that is what we will do. So it looks like 4 on this side. Okay, I think there's just the 2 nuts on that side, yep. Pulling away. Dripping tons of coolant, that's great. This is mostly going into the pan. But we may have just enough to lift the head up and pull it forward and get off the studs, so we'll leave it like that for now. So next step, the alternator attaches to the head, so we got this 12mm bolt to undo there. And then we are ready to take the valve cover off and start. Actually, no, we got to do the exhaust. Alright, so we'll take the 12mm off of the alternator bracket and start undoing the exhaust manifold bolts. Nuts, I guess they are. Which actually, we're not going to be able to come forward because we're hitting the alternator. Well, actually, I'll just loosen this bolt. Looks like to get the final coil out, we're going to have to take out the overflow bottle. So it's just held on with a 10mm bolt. Now we're ready for the valve cover. Okay, apparently that's retained in the head. Yeah, funny, these are like captive bolts. They stay with the valve cover. Alright, where am I missing? Nowhere. Unless I'm giant. Alright, give this a little pry. Should pop up, unless I'm totally blind. I think so. There it goes. Okay. Got the spark plug hole gaskets hanging us up. There we go. Alright, it's a little more goopy than I would like to see, but it's not terrible. It's not sludgy, but there's a bit of varnish. I didn't realize these things had solid valves, so that's kind of interesting. Old school. I like it. Alright. Exhaust. These are just 12mm nuts. And they are not rusted on there because I don't want any salt around here. These are like lock nuts. Which I guess makes sense with all the heat cycles. That just adds insult to injury for people who live in the Rust Belt. Or maybe it doesn't make a difference at all. I'm hoping we'll have enough slack here to slide it off the head without having to loosen anything underneath. But I do not know if that's the case. Another interesting thing about these J series motors is the exhaust manifold is integral to the head. So you can see they come to just this one port, which is kind of interesting. I'm guessing they're probably able to, well, for one, they're saving space, but I'm guessing there's probably ways that they're able to leverage the casting to get better exhaust flow. So that's kind of neat. These motors make a surprising amount of power. I think this one's rated for like 250, 260 horsepower, something like that. And the RL motor, which is just a bigger displacement version of this, I think it makes 300, so definitely nothing to laugh at for 3-liter-ish V6s. See if we got any play. No, we do not. No, we got a little bit, but not enough. So we'll have to go under and see what we can do. So the thing that's bolting on right there is the cap, and you can actually unbolt it where it meets the intermediate pipe, I guess you call it. So I'm gonna loosen the nuts that go from the intermediate pipe to the cat, and that should give us enough wiggle room. Alright, they're both out. Let's see if we got any wiggle room now. Nope, there's a third one. Alright. Now we are just about all the way free except for our timing belt, which I got a quick solution to that. Cut over here where I'm not going to hit the sprocket. Actually, even better, I'll just get some dikes in here. You know, we even just be able to shimmy it off. Okay, there we go. Now our head is totally free, minus the head bolts, obviously. Looks like they are 14s. I always like to do these with hand tools, because you can kind of tell if any bolts have lost their clamp from overheating, which we know for a fact this motor is overheated, so definitely something we want to be careful of. Well, be cognizant of. Oh yeah, I'm already getting nice whiffs of the old head bolt smell. I don't know what causes that. Maybe it's old oil that gets trapped in there and burns over time, but nothing like that smell. It's weird. Here's stuff creaking, which is kind of interesting. Once they're loose, I run them out with this just because I don't want to, you know, be going by hand for an hour. Just while they're finger tight. Oh, such a weird smell. Alright, head should be ready to come up. I'm gonna move you guys so I can get straight on it. Oh, and while I was loosening it, all the bolts felt nice and tight. Obviously you saw me struggle with them. And they were, more importantly, they were all even. So there wasn't like one loose one or a couple loose ones in the center or something like that, which would suggest that it was overheated pretty severely at some point. Alright, that's awesome. Can is not positioned right. There we go. Never get away with a huge splush. Let's see if we can get this out of here. You know what it's looking like? We just need to pull the whole rear manifold, water manifold mess back, which it does not want to do. So we gotta figure out why. I think it might be just getting hung up on the water crossover too. Give her a good pry. Alright, so unfortunately my camera died as I was taking, whoop, that's kind of cool, as I was taking the head off. So here it is. You can see we do have some kissage on the exhaust valves. Can't tell if they're bent, but we'll pop the cam out and see. I think there might be a slight bend there. It's not like, you know, catastrophic destruction. I've seen that. Like, I've seen where the head of the valve breaks all the way off, lodges in the piston, and it's a nightmare. But overall, we're looking okay. I was thinking if we had really bent valves, I would just get a different head on, because I actually have a couple of these motors sitting around. But since it's just like barely kissed, if it is bent, which we'll pop the cam out and see, then maybe we can just lap a new valve in, which is not the right way to do it, but we'll see. Who knows? Maybe I'll see how much the machine shop wants to do them, but I don't know. Let's pop the cam out and see for sure what we got going on. Forgot this isn't a straight up cam on lifters engine, so actually we'll just remove the rocker shafts, and that'll remove any cam tension that's on the valves right now. Let's see which one was this one. They're open right now, actually. There's tension on the cam, so I don't know, maybe we lucked out. I'm not gonna jinx it yet, but we'll see. Yeah, some of these are shorter than the others. Well, we'll figure it out. That's short. Okay, looks like the intakes are shorter. Yeah. Okay. Crisis averted. Got cockeyed, which is the opposite of what you want. Okay, so there's dowels, obviously. Alright, so now there is zero tension on the valves. It's just the valve springs holding them up. Now, so we gotta watch out. We got these. I'm guessing these are for the. Does this have VTEC? I don't know. Looks like it because it's got different cam profiles. Yeah, so these must be VTEC related. I don't know exactly what they do yet. Nothing else will fall out, it doesn't look like. So flip it over. Flip it upside down. So you can shim this up. Block of wood. You know what? I think somehow we might have avoided bending any valves, which is crazy. I haven't ever seen, excuse me, I haven't ever seen that on an interference engine like this. Anytime I've seen an interference engine break a timing belt, or have one fail, this one didn't break. Weird, but it always bends valves. So maybe we're getting lucky this time. Maybe. At least on this head. I guess we got to pull the other one and verify. So let's dump some gas in here. Well, I guess we just use water. Gas is a little more thin, so it's a better test of a valve seal, but water works. So let's just use water because I don't want to spill gas everywhere. Alright, so this is kind of old school backyard hack, whatever you want to call it. But it does give you an idea of valve seal. Yeah, it's not as good as a vacuum test, but it's what I got, so that's what we're gonna do. So if we have a bent valve, this is gonna immediately start spilling out. And if we have good valves, it should hold it for quite a while. There might be a couple small drips out of the ports, but definitely nothing major. Well, we don't have any majorly bent valves. As you can see, it's holding level at least a little bit. So now I just look in the ports and watch for any water dripping, which I really can't see the exhaust, so I should have spun the head, but it's okay. Zero drippage on the intakes. Nothing major on the exhaust. Do I dare try to turn this? Let me move this, John. Alright, somehow managed that without spilling. You know, I really can't believe it, but there's nothing coming out yet. So we'll leave it for a while. We definitely don't have bent valves, because if they were bent, then we'd be seeing issues already. So I might tilt this up a little bit so we get full coverage on the tops of the exhaust valves, which is where they'd be bent. So get something to shim. Now we wait. So you can see they're all full up to level. Actually even bubbling up a little bit because of surface tension. Give them about a half hour, we'll come back and check, see how the valve seal is. I can already tell you we got pretty decent valve seal because it's not running out. I've seen them where they just, you know, start peeing out. There's actually a trail of water that starts coming out. Like I said, gas will give you a faster result, or you could use acetone, or, you know, choose your toxic solvent, all the good stuff, but water works. So give it a half hour. I'm pleasantly surprised. I can hardly believe that. But hey, maybe the J series motors are just like over the edge into interference. Like they have just a tiny bit more lift than they would need to clear the piston totally. Question is our other head gonna have the same story? So we probably ought to pull it just to be safe. Although I really don't want to, but that would be the wrong thing to do. Alright, so I lost track of time a little bit. It's been probably 3 hours now. You can see this cylinder sealing up pretty much perfect. These two have dropped a little bit through the exhaust. You can see there's a couple drops down there. And there's not really any liquid at all on the intake ports. But that's kind of to be expected because the exhaust valves take a beating compared to the intake, just because of the hot exhaust gases. So I think we're probably fine running it. I would call that acceptable valve seal. So let's yank the other head and see what we got going on there. Alright, so I ended up hammering the valves, just tapping with a rubber mallet to make sure there was no junk in between the seat and the valve. And also if there's any kind of bend that could help realign the valve to the seat. So it's been sitting for about, I don't know, hour and a half, maybe close to 2 hours with water, and the meniscus hasn't dropped at all, and we have no drippage. So I'm gonna call that good enough. Let's get the other head off and see if it's the same. So one more inspection item on the cylinder head that we're gonna want to do before we call it healthy is make sure that it's flat, because obviously we know this engine was overheated. To what point is unknown, but any kind of overheating can cause warpage, and warpage will cause the cylinder head to not seal. Another kind of strange thing I see back here, you can probably see it, it's dull and it's actually a little rough. I don't know if that's a factory defect. It's not leaking, so we'll call that fine. I'm not sure what the deal is there. Everything else on the deck looks okay, but I went ahead and cleaned off the carbon on the combustion chamber edges here so that we can get a proper measurement with our straight edge. So I have this OEM Tools straight edge. It's precision ground, I guess, to, you know, 1,000th or whatever. There are kind of like more backyard ways I've used them. Use like a plane of glass or any kind of a straight edge, but if you're doing a one-off, that's okay. It can at least give you an idea of what's going on. My opinion is if you're doing this with any kind of regularity, or if you just want to do it right, you should just get one of these straight edges. So I wasn't able to find the factory spec on max cylinder head warpage, but a general rule of thumb is like 2,000ths is the max acceptable warpage. So we'll just get a feeler gauge, 2,000th feeler gauge, and we'll see if it fits under the straight edge in any points. Another thing you do is set it on top of the feeler gauge, and if the feeler gauge pulls the straight edge, then you know it's not warped. So we're good in this dimension. Check over here. And we'll check crosswise, however you want to say it. We have to check all these different ways because we're checking the flatness of a plane with a single line, basically. So this is looking really good. 2,000th doesn't even kind of sort of fit anywhere. And if we really want to check, we can get our smallest feeler gauge, which is a 1.5 thou. So 1.5 thou's not really fitting. Also, I haven't cleaned this deck super well yet, so any kind of crud obviously is going to affect a 1.5 thousandth measurement. And the spec may even be greater than 2 thou. I just wasn't able to find it, so I would call that flat. So obviously didn't get that hot. You have to get them pretty smoking hot to bend stuff or to warp stuff, so that is a good sign. Additionally, there wasn't any mixing of fluids, so it's not like the head gasket blew because it got driven after it overheated and then the timing belt went. Which I've also been thinking, I wonder if part of the reason that idler failed, we'll have to pull it off and see, but I wonder if they just slapped a belt on there without changing the pulleys and stuff. Could be. So when we pull them out, we'll see if it's the same markings as the belt, and that'll be kind of an interesting thing. So this cylinder head's looking good. Seals up perfect. I let it sit even with the water, you know, another day or two because I had other stuff to do, and there's zero leakage with the water. So any of that original leakage got fixed by me just tapping the valves. Hopefully we have the same story on the other cylinder head, so let's get to pulling that. So this side's going to be a little bit more annoying, obviously, but it should be about the same. Plus we have most of the stuff that's in the way off, so shouldn't be too bad. So we'll start off by peeling this wiring harness back. It's held on with a few 10mm, actually I think just a couple. It's like a power steering hose. Clips in back here, get that out of the way. I believe this support bar comes out, but I don't know if we're really going to need to do that. Doesn't look like it's going to get in our way too much. Disconnect all of our coil connectors. Ground strap here. It looks like we have a wire that goes all the way down here, plugs into something. Feel it? So we'll disconnect it. Actually, it's way down, unfortunately, so we need to just disconnect the injectors. Then we can just hopefully peel this back. Really annoying how they didn't put a connector in this cable back here. Alright, so we got a wire loom all the way back here that connects to the cylinder head. And then we have our fuel line bracket, so we'll pop both of those off, and then it looks like that's about all that attaches to this cylinder head. So we'll take the coils out, valve cover off, and then we can pop the cylinder head. Alright, now the coils can come out. Alright, this side's looking really good. Usually one side on a V6 or a V8 is a little crustier than the other because of the placement of the PCV valve. This one's just got a nice, golden brown flavor. Alright, so the exhaust manifold is going to be fun to get on this one because it's way back there. So, start working on that, I guess. Pull these back forward. Oh, there we go. It's not too bad. Should be able to do it. Alright, we should be free now. Yep. I was hoping most of that was gone. Alright, let's see. This ought to be fun. Trying to heft this over. Oh boy. Alright, we may need to unbolt from the bottom. Yeah, that's probably the easiest. Alright, I'm gonna crawl under and unbolt the rear bank collector. Alright. Car's jacked up. I may need to let it down so I can actually reach this thing. Okay. Let's see if it can come off now. Okay, there we go. He was just hung up on that rear dowel. Hopefully we're not messing up the deck surface. Jeez. There's one more wire harness connection. Okay, now we should. I hope. Ooh. Alright, that was a bit of a job. So what was hanging me up, get this out of the way. So what was hanging me up was these connectors here. They slot onto the head and they would not let me pull it out. So, man, that still is annoying. Alright, so here are our cylinders. Looking pretty good. A little bit of wear, but nothing crazy. And overall, the deck's looking good. Obviously, needs cleaned up really well. Soak up all the coolant. Alright, so now the real moment of truth. Do we have any bent valves? On first glance, it looks pretty much like the other head. Maybe even a little better. There's maybe a little bit of a witness of slight kissage, but let me tap the valves and we'll do the same leak test. So let's pull the cam out, or pull the rockers off rather, so that we can make sure all the valves are fully closed. And then all I did last time is I just tapped on the top of the valves here a couple times. That's just to dislodge any carbon or junk between the seat and the valve. Or if there's any slight bending, it could correct it. Alright, now we'll give her taps. Use a dowel to make it a little easier. Now we're going to spill oil all over the bench. This will be a test for any gross bendage. Which I don't see any, which is a good first sign. Let's fill the chambers up with water, see what happens. Alright, so we got a decent meniscus on all of these. There's nothing actively running out, so I will give it a little bit. That's oil that came out while I was pulling the head. So I'm gonna let that sit for maybe an hour or two. I'm guessing it's gonna be the same story as the other head. Fingers crossed. I mean, if there was a bent valve, we would already see stuff pouring out, but I will leave it, let it percolate, and I'm guessing we're gonna be just fine. I'm sure the head flatness will be okay too. I'll double check it, but the other one was perfect, so I'm sure the same is true here. And then I'm gonna start cleaning up. Luckily, this engine uses multi-layer steel gaskets, so there's not a whole bunch of nasty residue. On especially older engines that use composite gaskets, it's a whole chore to get them off of the cylinder head, especially on aluminum, because you don't want to scratch the aluminum, but you got to get it off. I'll bring you guys back once I have everything clean, and then we'll start going through reassembly.